So this is evolution of castles. So we're looking at basically how have castles changed from some of the earliest types of castles we see to about the end of the castle range, which is about 1900 or so. So when and the whereabouts of the first fort is unknown, but we do know why they were built. People needed a way of protecting themselves against hostile tribes and wild animals. First forts were made of wood and encircled houses and farms. Later, more advanced civilizations in Greece and the Middle East would build fortified citadels and strongholds out of brick and stone. These would serve both as places and palaces and places of refuge for local populations. This presentation will explain the evolution of early forts and castles throughout the ages. Another presentation will discuss how castles were destroyed or subdued. So, you want to know this again, make sure you're writing this down, a maiden castle. So basically what you have here is an earthen mound, which basically would have, you can kind of see there's these ditches or steps that you would need to get up to. It's kind of seen better up here. And then you have the town on the hill surrounded by a large fence made of wood. And this was not really a castle, but more of a town located on top of a hill with wood stakes at the top. This one is pictured in Dorset, England, was constructed around 300 BC. It was destroyed by Romans around 43 AD when they invaded England. Although there was obviously earlier ones than this, this kind of gives you an idea of probably what you saw. But this is one of the best ones of early 300 BC. But I mean, this one lasted almost, what, 350 years, so that's pretty good. Great Wall of China. Great Wall of China began a series of earthen walls, although it's not like a castle per se, but I mean, the idea is the same. It's just a big wall. It basically starts as earthen walls, which is basically just large mounds of dirt at around 400 BC, and then basically it starts being rebuilt with stone in 214 BC. It would eventually stretch for more than 2,480 miles. Its purpose was mainly to keep the Mongolians out of China. It does not work. Walls don't always work. They may help, but don't always work. And largely abandoned by 1644 until open for tourism. These are pictures that I took myself. I went there in 2009. You can kind of see how big these steps are. Here's me and my wife before kids. This is, I was on this side taking a picture this side. So this side was the side you could walk all the way up there. I wasn't really into that, so we went up this wall, went into this little area, and I think this is about as far as we went right here. Then we kind of explored this little area here, which is kind of a gatehouse, this gatehouse right here. And so, yeah, kind of interesting and fun thing to see. So you can see, I mean, this is still pretty steep. Doesn't look as steep when you see it here, but when you're actually walking it, it's pretty steep. So. Seda. Basically, this fortress was built in 100s BC, fortified by the Jews, and was thought to be impregnable due to its remote and isolated location. During a war with the Romans, Masada became the last stronghold of Jewish power, and the Roman commander began to siege it in 72 AD. Jews were like, oh, we're going to be totally safe. Check this out, right? We're like on top of a plateau. No one can get to us, right? I mean, and the Romans were like, oh, hell no. And they basically just built a huge ramp. They did this themselves. And so they encircled it. They ordered a massive earthly ramp, which again can still be seen to this day, right here. And basically they went up to it. But before the Romans could attack it, the Jewish defenders burned everything to the ground, and they all committed suicide. So they were like, well, you're not taking it from us, so we're just going to commit suicide instead. Kind of interesting, but yeah, whenever you think something's impregnable or can't be defeated, there is always a way of defeating it. So the Bailey Castle, Mott and Bailey's, or some of the earliest in Europe, especially Western Europe and the British Isles. Built around the 800s or 900s, during that basically fall of the Roman Empire, those dark ages. They were very easy to build, and basically a way of keeping the townspeople safe. And so again, very simple. Have a moat or have a ditch, wooden timber around it, small gatehouse. And so again, you can kind of see that you would have the Lord up on top. They would get a little bit more elaborate as time goes on, and maybe made of some stone here. But for the most part, it was mostly Mott and Bailey castles were made of wood. Chateau Gallard, basically the first stone castles appeared in Western Europe about 900 AD, and basically would last about 600 years. One of the greatest of these castles was Chateau Gallard, constructed by Richard I, the King of England, between 1195 and 1198. So it took about 3 years to build. Basically another castle which was thought to be impregnable. It fell to Philip II of France in 1204 AD. So again, it only lasted 6 years before it actually fell. Siege began in 1203, was encircled, and basically the French used catapults and siege towers to fill the moat. And then basically they used large shields, and they dug out underneath the tower, which I will talk about if I haven't already done so. That you dig underneath the tower, you dig underneath the tower. It messes with the foundation. The foundation is not there to hold up the tower, and it's going to come falling down, and so thus that's what you have. And this is what you can see, what's left of that castle right here. Concentric castles are concentric. This is basically was brought back from the Crusades. We learned from the Turks and from Muslims how to build a concentric castle. And basically a concentric castle, again, is you have a strong lower wall, right, and a stronger higher wall on the inside. Here you can see it here, right, same thing. And then right here. And this one even almost has a third, but yeah, same idea. And again, you could attack from here down onto your enemy. And then this one's always taller, because if you are attacking, maybe the enemy got hold of this one, they get on top, they're firing at you. If you have the higher ground, you can still fire down on them, and they have to fire up. So it's still better to be the upper hand. So this one always was higher in the concentric castle. You can kind of see again, you know, it's much lower. When you look at here, this is much higher than right here. So this is a concentric castle. Make sure you write down this right here. Riverbank castles were replaced by the riverbank, right? And basically it was the way of guarding rivers, because again, rivers were one of the main ways of moving goods around, and kings and princes would build there to control the flow of those people and goods. So make sure you write that. They also have high tolls, so you would have to pay a toll to get past those castles. This is Heidelberg Castle, basically the Nectar River. This is a good example. It was just mostly destroyed by fire in 1620. This is one that I visited in Germany in 2010, I believe. And so again, my wife, and you can kind of see here, this was some of it was added later, but you can kind of see what was left of the castle. Like the inside was quite beautiful. This is all stuff you could actually go in and was safe. But there's large portions of the castle that was not fixed or could not be fixed. So very beautiful place. Then you have a walled fortress town. Basically, it's a town that has a large wall around it, and it would basically keep the people safe. You have, I'm not even going to try and pronounce it, but you have this one in Morocco, which is here and right here, built in 757 AD. It has only one defensive wall, but again, it's tall enough to where you could probably keep some people out. Europeans would eventually build greater walls of Carcassonne in France. This town is a great example of a medieval town protected like a smaller castle with two defensive walls. Again, this is what it looks like from like Google Maps, above it. This is more of what it looks like in actual maps, right? Was showing the roads and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, obviously it protects the people if they get in, they get in, but at least it gives you one more layer of protection. And then forts, right? You got forts, although not considered castles, they still offer military shelter, protected from enemy. Some were very simple, like early frontier forts or adobe walls, very similar to Alamo, excuse me. Where then some, like Fort Sumter, was made of brick, and Revolutionary War ones were made of like limestone and stuff. So there's all different types, but again, you can see, I think I was there in 2015. I think that's when I went to Alamo, 2015, and basically what's left of the Alamo, I mean, this was the whole Alamo, the fortification at the time in 1836. This is, sorry, the bell. This right here, you can see, right, is basically the Alamo today. I mean, this is pretty much all that's left of the Alamo today. So yeah, and then Fort Sumter, out in the island, you have it was basically manned on all sides with cannons, and so you were able to fire upon enemies, but it basically had a really great of Charleston Harbor. You could fire on anybody or anything coming in or out of that harbor. Last one is romantic castles. This is the rich people who can afford beautiful castles, not really meant for defending. I mean, if you want to go up to the castle and knock on the door and say, hello, we're invading. But for the most part, these are just meant for extravagant lifestyles. And so if you ever want to see, there's this PBS series called Downton Abbey. It's basically at this castle right here. And it's in England. And so it gives you a really good idea of what basically a romantic castle would basically be. Those are castles. Thank you so much.